Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's meeting. I'll be your host. Hey, good job. Thank you. All right, so we will go ahead and get started this morning with our welcome message from Rosemary.
Thank you, Gerald, and thank you for facilitating today. It's wonderful to have you do this. Today, I welcome everyone to our open table where we connect with each other in the essential work of imagining and building a community where everyone has access to safe and secure housing. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We also acknowledge the traumatic history of conquest, genocide, and stolen lands. Those of us who live here now, whether housed or unhoused, continue to have complicated interactions on this unceded land that is known as Tacoma and Pierce County. Just this week, the Tacoma City Council passed an ordinance opposed by our coalition members that limits access to these lands by creating 10-block buffer, no camping zones around temporary city-sanctioned shelter sites. Among other provisions, camping or storing personal belongings in certain identified public areas in Tacoma is banned. Beyond encouraging the use of approved temporary or permanent shelters, the city is silent about what public lands unhoused residents could occupy. The incessant refrain beats in my head and in my heart. Where can people go? Where will people go? Where can they be safe? We'll hear more today about the camping ban and talk more about the current sweeps, progress on new shelter options, and the county plan to end homelessness. But I ask that we begin our time together today with a respectful honoring of the work of those who do their best to survive on the streets when options are scarce or none. Here's a poem by Claire Millican, a poet with lived experience of homelessness, in her 2014 book of the same title, After Houses. After houses. There were no houses for us, only apartments. Then no apartments, only streets. Then no streets, just water moving in its coruscating channels toward dusk. By doorways at night, fitful and intermittent, I heard the ocean move against its boundary, verge of salt, arriving from the luminous places that cannot be sheltered. We perched on the back of someone else's inherited chairs, chassis at night, and drank what was offered. It must happen. The ocean burns inward, graphic inland levers of lost maps. My house is a story burned down. Working from hands in dreams, pull from the abandoned garden, broken toys, steel, potsherds, grandfather's arrowheads, silenced Muskogee names. After houses, along the flatlands, shake off the knowledge of blood. Raptors burying their shoulders into sky. So we gather on this land, near these waters, and beneath the common sky. There's much work to be done, and welcome today to the work. Especially welcome to those who are new or returning after a long time away. I'll just say briefly what our common rules are here and then ask anyone who wishes to, who's new, to just introduce yourself with a small statement if you're belonging to a group that's also working on these issues. So we ask that you mute yourself when you're not speaking, that you use the Zoom raised hand features if you have something to say so that we can know what order to ask people to speak in, that you limit distractions by turning off your video if you're doing other things during this meeting, and that you use the chat to share information, make announcements, contribute to the discussion. We use this as a record of many things that we share with one another, so you can also introduce yourself there if you prefer. And our community norms, we ask that we be aware of power dynamics, challenge ideas and not people, and listen to learn. So with that, I would invite you, if you're new, to raise your hand, and we'll hear briefly from you what you're connected with as you join us today. Hey, Mom. I don't know how I pronounced your name right. I'm sorry.
You did great. It's Heyman's song, and thank you so much for starting off such a great meeting with that, Rosemary. My name is Heyman Song. I work for We Care Daily Clinics in Auburn, and we were invited along with Dr. Hutch and Brooke to explain a bit of our program. So we hope to do that soon when you're ready for that.
Thank you and very much welcome. Tom?
Oh,
Hi, Rosemary. I'm Tom. I'm the medical director at We Care Daily Clinics and work with Heyman. And I echo his thanks for having me today and for that beautiful opening to the meeting. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you very much for being here, Tom. I appreciate it. And Brooke?
Hi, I'm Brooke Gower. I am at We Care Mobile Clinics. I also work
This
with
meeting is
Heyman
being recorded.
and Dr. Hutch. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Well, you're very welcome. And I'm sorry we had some interruptions there. I don't know if you'd want to repeat that. I didn't quite hear it.
Sorry about that. Brooke Gower, I'm a project manager at We Care Daily Clinics for our mobile clinics. I also work with Dr. Hutch and Heyman. So excited to be here. Thank you for the invite.
And thanks to all of you for coming. We look forward to hearing from you.
All right, I see no other hands. So if there's anyone out there, just feel free to introduce yourself in the chat or raise your hand. We'll come back to you at some point. All right, so we'll be moving on. This next section, we'll be looking at for what's going on the streets this week. Any updates? Any comments on anything coming up, such as street sweeps or any other things that you're seeing out there? No updates from the streets? All right, what about we'll just jump right in and see if we got any. There we go. Andrea?
Hello, thank you. Sorry for my tardy hand. My name is Andrea Hogue. I'm with the South End Neighborhood Council, and I also do some grassroots outreach for 253 Merrymakers. And I just wanted to, there was something interesting that happened in the past week where I had reached out to one of our CLOs regarding activities near an encampment. Now, the activities weren't specific to the campers that were there. It was, I believe, high school kids coming to use drugs in the encampment area, like blending in. And so I called because I was concerned about the kids, not the campers. And it kept the conversation, I just found it interesting, is that the conversation kept circling back to, well, we can report the encampment to the city. And I was like, well, no, we're already working with the campers. We don't need that. So I do think there's a little work that still needs to be done in the police department a little bit, because I just thought that it just kept trying to change the narrative of what I was asking for. And so I just wanted to share that with y'all. And that was my experience this week.
Thank you, Andrea, for that. Marcus Radford, we welcome you to Tacoma Rescue Mission. Thanks for being in attendance. I see no other hands. Anyone else have any updates or introductions? All right. Well, we'll just jump right into, because I'm sure that we don't have a county meeting yet. Anyone from any committees has anything right now as we have something waiting? Hey man, Rob's gonna tell me I'm pretty good. I got time going by so fast. Rob's gonna say, Gerald, do this all the time. All right. Well, we far ahead. Is there anyone here from Garrett? Do you want to go ahead and get into yours?
I think we're going to do a little audible really quick.
Okay.
We didn't do a good job confirming with We Care about them coming today. So we're going to try to wedge them into the agenda right now, if that's all right. So why don't we hear from what I think is a pretty amazing new resource in Pierce County. So glad you guys made time to be here, and give it back to you, Gerald, although I've kind of done a pseudo introduction there.
No, perfect. Yeah, so Haman, or
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Gerald, so much. And Garrett, thanks for the invite. I am going to briefly describe what we do in Auburn. We're an opioid treatment program, much like the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department's opioid treatment program. Some like to use the word methadone clinic, but we do so much more than that. And hopefully Dr. Hutch can briefly describe the medical services we provide. And a key will be to have Brooke describe our mobile units, which is a brand new thing across the state. We'll be the first to launch that. We initiated that in Seattle, but our second 40-foot mobile clinic we intend to have in Tacoma soon. So hopefully Brooke can share those details. Been in Auburn a little over 3 years. And so I'll hand it over to Dr. Hutch to describe the medical services. And then please, if you have any questions, raise your hand. We're privileged to be part of this coalition. Thank you. Dr. Hutch.
Thanks, Heyman. Yeah, like Heyman said, we're so much more than any one component, just medical or just counseling. But within the medical services, opioid treatment programs are programs that you may have heard of referred to as methadone clinics. We don't, in the methadone clinic community, call ourselves that because I think it's a little misleading because it just focuses on one medication. And so there are 3 FDA-approved medications for treating opioid use disorder: Vivitrol, methadone, and Suboxone, and other buprenorphine products. So we treat people with opioid use disorder who want to stop using opioids like fentanyl and heroin. And we, among some other things like biopsychosocial counseling and cognitive behavioral therapy and group sessions, we offer medication options to help them stop and to help them reduce their use and to reduce their risk for overdose. In addition to that, I feel, as having been trained as a family medicine doctor, I feel that it's important when addressing addiction to think about the causes of addiction and the things that addiction leads to. So we will treat things like skin infections and hepatitis C that come from drug use. And we also try to help patients address mood disorders and some other things that we think may be contributing to their addiction. So we are staffed with a team of 5 medical providers that are ready and willing to do what we can to get patients started on therapy as soon as possible with as little red tape and as few hoops to jump through in doing that. And we meet people where they're at. I think that in terms of opioid treatment programs, we're a pretty low barrier, harm reduction based kind of program that is always willing to meet patients where they are and help them get their treatment goals. So that's a brief overview of what we do on the medical side.
Hey, hi there, I'm Brooke. My primary function right now at We Care is to oversee the start and the basic operations of our mobile clinics. Our mobile clinics are an extension of the services that we do offer in Auburn. We do our best to offer the same services at those seeking services at the mobile clinic, just maybe in a more expedited way, just given locations and environments that we will be treating folks. As Heyman mentioned, we did launch our first mobile clinic in North Seattle. We're located at 84th and Aurora, if any of you are familiar with that area. And then we will be launching one shortly in the Tacoma area. It'll be located at 2501 East D Street in Tacoma. I'll put that in the chat. So when we do launch, that's where we'll be located. We're excited to be doing this. As it was stated, we're one of the first in the States to offer these services. So in meeting people where they are at, you know, this is kind of a #1 location for us to actually be serving folks where they live in their backyard. So we're very, very excited about it. We're very, very excited to meet our neighbors and be part of the community and to be offering these, you know, potentially life-saving services.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any questions from anyone? Yes, Courtney.
wondering if you all have looked at the 10-block camping ban that was recently passed by the City Council and how that might impact your location choice, and that people will have to travel further to that location now than they previously had to?
That's such a great question. We're learning so much from just this coalition, and I have to say that we're not quite as knowledgeable as this group. However, we've looked at least 6 different locations. We've tried to partner with the rescue mission. We've looked at inpatient agencies. Not only is our mobile clinic headed to Tacoma, we also have separate vehicles and drivers. So our intention is to perhaps do a little bit of a loop with an extra vehicle to see if that will help, because it's like you said, the areas that we need to be in might be a moving target because we don't exactly know where to be. So we've asked for input from several people to say, where should we be? And then we've located not too far from the Freight House in Tacoma Dome, where we're paying, I believe, $3,000 for a parking spot there. So we're going to start there, and then we're going to designate some drivers and vehicles to see if we can bring people to and from the unit. I don't know how sustainable that will be, but that's really our intentions. And Brooke or Dr. Hutch, if I missed anything, please let me know. But that's our intention, is to kind of do a loop. I think Laura Morris said that they had a loop for the homeless network, and I don't know what that involved, but we want to learn from you, where should we be and what should we anticipate, since this will be entirely new for us on the mobile unit.
Thank you. And we'll probably be figuring it out very soon ourselves too.
Thank you for that, Courtney. Teresa?
I just wanted to check if you're following the chat. There's a conversation there about the difference between the nasal spray and the injectable. I don't know if that's something you can respond to, which kind you're offering.
Well, perhaps Dr. Hutch could address that best. I know that we have every patient issued Narcan from our dispensary that we order from a pharmacy, but perhaps Dr. Hutch could cover that, since he's much more of an expert than I am on that.
Sure. I'll read the chat as I'm doing so, but we offer both. So we have Narcan, which is nasal naloxone, and we help every patient get that when they come. And we also have a pretty big quantity of injectable naloxone that people can elect to get if they would like, and if they prefer. And I see that people in the chat here are asking for Narcan more often than injectable. So this is very common. I prefer Narcan. I think that the nasal type of delivery system for naloxone generally has fewer barriers. It's a little faster to give. People are generally less uncomfortable giving a nasal spray. So we do try to get that. And because it's covered through Medicaid, we have a relationship with a pharmacy near us in Auburn that helps us get that delivered the very next day for patients. So we do not have to rely on grants for those. So we'll be able to get patients Narcan pretty quickly, and we'll certainly take their preferences into consideration in terms of what we try to keep our supplies up with.
And then briefly, with the People's Harm Reduction Alliance, they provided us training on the mobile unit, the entire staff. They shared some links indicating where you can obtain the nasal Narcan, I believe, maybe the injectable, but Brooke and I will probably send that out to this email listserv that you have. My understanding is that anyone with medical insurance can go to a pharmacy to obtain it. So I believe everyone here who has medical insurance should try that, so that you have some on hand for yourself. But we'll send out some additional information providing that for you.
All right. Continue to use the chat, and we'll take 2 more questions from Zoe and then Jan, but please continue to use the chat so we can be mindful of where we're going and continue to go. It's great information. Zoe?
Yeah, we'll, I assume, dive into this pretty soon, but what folks have been alluding to is that just this week, the city council passed a camping ban that includes anyone within 10 blocks of any of our temporary shelters. I don't know if anyone has the map on hand to drop in the chat, but I just wanted to say that that is the concern that's kind of being floated here in terms of location. I think there's a pretty good chance it's going to be struck down in court eventually, but yeah, just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you for that update. Thank you. Jan?
Yes, I think that Dr. Hutch or somebody referred to Laura Morris' ban. Wanted to know about the ban. Alan Brown, put your mute on. Thank you, Alan, your sweetheart. The Laura is no longer there, but the phone number is still good and the van is still good. Used it yesterday at Tacoma Rescue Mission. So the phone number, and this is for anybody who is dealing with folks at established shelters who want to go to established medical or behavioral health centers. The phone number for the van is 253-534-8734. And that's the Tacoma Fire Department CARES AMR van. They answer the phone. Don't you love us? Don't you love a service provider that answers the phone? They answer the phone. So that would be a great partnership to continue this. So thank you.
Thanks for that, Jan. All right, so really appreciate the updates, and that was great information. Just a couple things just in the chat. We may get an impromptu visit from Richard. He's down at Sweep now. And Toby was giving us information that 38th and Fife, there's police activity, seems to be revolving around increased activity in that area and more campers and more vehicles in that area. So just be aware of that. All right. So Garrett, we will be moving on to you for update on the comprehensive plan and homelessness.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Gerald, and glad to be here. I also just want one more word on the We Care clinic. That's a kind of a secret project of the Muckleshoot Indian tribe. And I just kind of want to point that out, that's one of the neat benefits to having these really, socially focused tribal organizations putting resources in our community. So just heads up on that. Appreciate that new project and how it's expanding. So funding for the comprehensive plan to end homelessness, that's the update I'm going to give you today. I was in the middle of putting an amazing presentation together, but got completely distracted. So I'm not as prepared as I wanted to be. Oh, great. Awful thing. So I'm putting in the chat, hopefully. Yes, success. A document that was designed just for the advisory board to be kind of talking a little bit about how do we fund the comprehensive plan to end homelessness. And I'm going to share screen with that and just sort of walk you quickly through that document because I think it outlines pretty well the things we're looking at as potential funding sources. Right, so comprehensive plan to end homelessness, right? The goal of this, this plan is to understand the size of the need, right? And the size of our system and close the gap between the system we need and the system we have. And so that's going to be expensive. We're currently spending about $50 million a year on the operation of the kind of homeless crisis response system. So outreach, shelter, rapid rehousing, the coordinated entry, diversion work, permanent supportive housing, all those things that have really specific meanings to a lot of you and probably mean nothing to some of you, right? But basically the parts we think of as the homeless system. And we need to be putting about another 100 million a year into that, right? That's the more shelter beds we need so that we don't need to have camping bans because there's places for everybody to sleep, and the projects to help people move into, permanent housing, right? Normal tenant-based housing, so that they can have enough supports to become independent, permanent supportive housing if folks need long-term supports, right? But basically everything to get folks permanently housed and to meet their immediate needs. And so as we look at this, we have lots of things we could do, and most of them won't work, right? $100 million is a lot. And it's not just kind of a one-time thing. It's a, I think of it as a 10-year project, right? Like we have to think at least 10 years, right? So we need another $1 billion over the next decade coming into this system, right? So it's not bake sale money, right? It's pretty substantial, right? And again, this is best practices we're funding. And the cost of it's pretty dramatic. And the reason it's so high, and is because a lot of times people think about homelessness, they think about how many people they see when they're traveling around, right? They see the lake, right? We're designing for the river, right? It's not who's homeless right now, it's who's flowing in, right? And so this plan is designed for the river, because we can't stop, sadly, domestic violence and the impacts of substance use and mental health and loss of income and systemic racism, right? We work on all of those things, but they're not going to be finished, right, getting better in our society in 2 years or 3 years, right? Not to mention availability of housing. So I'm going to share screen. I'm going to do like 2 more minutes as I walk through this. My goal is to give you a quick overview of what we're working on. We don't have time to discuss it really today, but if you have areas you think we ought to be putting attention to as potential funding sources, I'll put my contact information into the chat, and don't hesitate to reach out. This is exactly what I should be working on. And so I would very much enjoy having a conversation around this. I know lots of you have had chances to have input in different ways. This document represents lots of time and energy from lots of people. Cynthia Stewart was a huge help, right? And just kind of, Larry Sequist, kind of thought partners is kind of, and, there's things that should be in here that just may not be possible in our community, but I kind of want to consider everything. So, and these aren't things that document I shared, those aren't things that are advocated by the county executive or the county council or in any way Human Services Department. Those are just places and ways other communities find funding to support the homeless programs, right? And they're things we should look at because other communities do it. So without further ado, I haven't looked at the chat. Richard asked, would 100 million include the cost of the Community First Village? Yes, that would. So Community First Village, right, is a 250 bed permanent supportive housing. That's important, but we already have 1,000 something beds of permanent supportive housing, and we need 1,000 more, right? So that's one part of the work we need to do in order to build out the homeless system. And that's a lot of capital in that project, which I don't really include in this because we work on that around affordable housing more, right? So that behavioral health funding, capital to build housing, right? Those are somewhat handled separately from how to operate the crisis response system. So there's a ridiculous number of words, which is why I should have made this into a PowerPoint. So again, I suck on that. It's almost for my own benefit, but so you might know what you're getting into if you open that document and take a look that I shared in the chat. This talks a little bit about the mandate we're given from council, right? They asked us to come to them with a funding plan. We are going to give them a menu. It's not going to be $100 million a year of options. It's going to be $200 million a year of options. And hopefully they will be able to remove things that are impractical or too damaging to the community. And we can kind of nail in things that are appropriate for the community and reasonable. So places we're looking at local governments, right? That's one place that it's easiest to raise money because we have local control over it. Currently, only about a couple $1 million come in from general funds from the city of Tacoma, really is the only one. But some other municipalities provide some funding from the general fund, but generally we do not spend our general fund money, right? Most of that goes to public safety, but we don't spend that. So we don't spend a lot of like local discretionary dollars. And so if we did, we could bring in quite a bit. If we just spent 3% of our general fund on the homeless crisis response system, by we, I mean Pierce County, City of Tacoma, right? All of our municipalities. Again, this is not a popular option. This is not something that will probably have a lot of support, but it's one way to think about how do you get the kind of money we need, right? At scale that's repeatable year after year, right? So again, these are all things that can be like, no, we're not interested in that. And that's fine, but you can't say no to all of them, right? You've got to say no to only so many because you have to say yes to some, right? Property tax levy, again, incredibly unpopular. And there's a certain irony to taxing housing to make housing more affordable. But that's a place where you can get, quarter, 25 cents on $1,000 of assessed value, right? That can get you 34 million annually. Right. And I'm the same person that complains about the increase in my property tax every year. Right. So I want it both ways. And that's the frustrating part about taxes. We have a very regressive taxing system. And if you want to get as regressive as you can, you could work on something like a sales tax. Right. King County and lots of other communities, right, are looking at ways to do that. And something really interesting that's actually might be happening statewide is sometimes communities have put taxes on the sale of high value property, right? So money is exchanging hands, you take a cut, right? That's how taxes work. And so if you tax sale of $1 million or more homes, right, that feels a little less regressive, right, than sales tax, which is taxing everybody, right? Taxing people with wealth. We're going to look at non-government. I know I'm going to run short on time here, so I'm going to go super fast. Looking at non-government, right? So that's philanthropic, that's business, and that's faith communities, right? None of those three have the resources to put in massive amounts, but like the faith community, I don't think we're interested in funding from the faith community, but a lot of them have land that could be used, right? We've seen this happen with the Six and Orchard shelter site, right? That's on church property. And to buy a piece of property like that, it'd be $1 million, right? So that church in leasing that land has done a good thing. And so those are opportunities there. And philanthropy and business also have an ability to play a significant role. Just the scale in our community is a little different than what they're capable of doing on their own. When we're looking at state and federal government, we're largely looking at increases in existing funding for programs, right? So they have a variety of programs that meet our needs. They just aren't putting enough money in. And those seem more challenging to increase, but something that if we as a community, and by community, I mean everybody, business, philanthropy, government, right, influencers, and community members, that we all push hard and ask for the same thing, $30 million more into housing vouchers for our housing authorities around people experiencing homelessness, right? If we all ask for the same thing, it might be easier for our legislators to provide that. And so that would be how we would work on those kind of things. I've provided, I think, some, information about where our money currently comes from. I can always get you more information about that and learning more about it. I also provided, I think, some really fun information about different communities and how they have funded some of their homeless programs. A tax at restaurants in Miami, income tax in Portland, and just a variety of ways that they've gone about things. And again, these aren't advocating that we do them in Pierce County. It's just, hey, what could we do? And kind of trying to create that menu. Okay, that was a lot of talking. You've got that. I'm gonna stop sharing. And I don't know how much time I have for questions, but I'm gonna drop into the chat my contact information. Yeah, there's lots of terms in that document that are really housing system and homeless system specific. So sorry. So I guess I'll take any questions if we have time. Mr. Daniels.
We do. Let's take, if we have 2 questions. See no hands. Teresa.
Only because no one else raised their hand. So if anyone else has something to say, I talk enough. But I just want to say that we are incredibly lucky to have this level of really taking this and making it understandable for people. I hope that we can get you out on the road more. I know you're already out on the road, Garrett, providing this information, but this is really the first time I've heard someone talk about those funding sources in a way that people who are anti-tax, anti-anything would have to say, well, if not that, then what? So thank you for that. It's not a question, it's a comment.
All right, thank you, Teresa. And we will go to Rosemary.
So I was also putting my hand up because nobody else had, but I want to thank you, Garrett, for doing this. And also the question I had is, knowing the coalition as well as you do and the options that you painted, is there something there that you think is one of the things that we could be good at advocating for that would have a real chance of making a difference in the overall scheme of funding?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. And yeah, I really honestly believe there needs to be some more local money going into the homeless crisis response system. In Pierce County, we put a lot of money into programs, but it's money that flows through us. It's not money that we collect locally. You can argue with that a little bit if you want, right? But I think some skin in the game, even though I feel like we're taxed a lot. But yeah, I think just advocating, you know, I don't know. That was super terrible answer to your question.
It actually was a fine answer because I think you're right about that. And I think the fact that we hear from the county sometimes about all the.
Oops, you just muted, Rosemary.
You muted Rosemary.
Here I was talking away. Anyway, I just wanted to second that idea about local money because it's hard to hear about funds being allocated for things that are passed through that are meant to look as if there's a big commitment. And it's a different kind of commitment for sure if you're a pass-through group rather than actually having your residents say, we have doing this because we know it needs to be done.
And before Jay goes, in the chat, Courtney mentioned, you know, we can't tax people out of their homes. And she put forward, I think, a really interesting idea of like, let's evaluate all of these in terms of who do they benefit, who do they impact, and looking at, does this impact people of color more so than the general population? So I'll be presenting that with that context. And so again, I just really appreciate people that can help me take ideas of equity and sort of operationalize them into ways to kind of enrich our understanding of impacts. So thanks for that, Courtney.
All right. Thank you, Rosemary, for the comment and question. We'll take one more from Jay, and after Jay, we will move on to Timothy for breakout review.
What I was capturing in that is all of us having one message and having a go and doing a fundraising opportunity. I think that is something that might be an opportunity in more than one case. We all seem to be different heads in different programs working together, but more side by side. If we all came up with the same message and pushed it at a simple time to get funding from all opportunities as a community base, that may be the best opportunity we have. And that would save all the other arguments.
Thank you, Jay. Let's continue to use the chat, and Gary will answer as he can in the chat, and we will be moving on to our review of our breakout room. Timothy, you're up, sir.
All righty. Thank you, Gerald. So this is going to be briefer than usual. Our last discussion group centered around talking points for the upcoming city council meeting and the consideration of the resolution. That was written up and sent out last weekend so that people could have that to inform their communications about the resolution. I have dropped it into the chat so that if anybody wants to review the document, it's there. But I don't really see much point in going through the point by point review of the document at this point because politically it's a little bit moot and it's already been sent out for people's review. So I recommend that we just go directly to the briefing about the ordinance and the discussion about where we go from now, be forward looking rather than looking over our shoulder. And that's it.
All right, Timothy, thank you very much. Anyone have any comments? All right, we'll be moving on to update on the camping ban.
There is a hand. Marcus didn't put his digital hand up. He just got his real hand up.
Okay, Marcus.
I just want to say I'm so excited to participate at this level on a Zoom meeting, to hear so many people consciously, intentionally thinking and looking, grappling with how to address some of these issues. And please, you know, the honesty that's needed, you know, is so crucial. Whether they oppose one another is still a process that we need to engage. And just, I want to encourage everybody to continue being as transparent in your thinking process with the whole group. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for the comments, Marcus. Anyone else? I don't see any more hands. All right, any updates? Anyone have any updates? I know we got a lot of conversation going in the chat, and Zoe gave us some feedback as well. Were there any other conversations or updates on the camping ban? And there it is.
Well, Gerald, I actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about the camping ban, and then we are going to do a breakout session around what next. So there were a lot of people who attended this, who attend these meetings, who showed up. This is Tacoma's 10-block camping ban. For people who don't know about it, we will get into it a bit more. And also along those lines of about a bit more, next week we have Kevin Ruby from the HEAL team coming to talk about, they are just grappling with how to deal with this now. They are trying to figure out what they're going to do next. He's going to come next week to talk with us about that. So you'll get it from a different angle. And today we're going to ask people to think about the ban. What can we as a coalition possibly do? What are your ideas? What are your expectations about? Somebody put something in the chat earlier about some of the services that we have typically found at the campsites. Where will they be? That sort of thing. So here it is. That's the name of the ordinance, and it was passed on October 11th, and it's scheduled to become enforceable on November 14th. And I just want to point out that if you can't see this, you know, you can move your the little images of people over to the side with that black bar. But here's the average high and low temperatures in Tacoma. It just so happens that right there, it's going to be enforced November 14th. November 12th is where we drop down into the cold season. So that seems a little bit ironic to me and sad. If the camping ban is enforced, this is what it will do. It'll make this 10-block radius the buffer around not all of the shelters, but all of the emergency shelters that are funded by the city. And also it will prohibit camping around protected waters. Those things are things that are in under scrutiny, of course, and they're going to have pretty deep ramifications that I'm not sure are being completely considered. But this is the one that might be illegal. In fact, I would say it is. I know that Maureen Howard says it is. Christia Bowman says it is. Making violations of the ban a misdemeanor and making it punishable by a fine or imprisonment or both, that does go against the Ninth Circuit. So I know there are some people looking at visiting that. The other thing that during the first discussion, that the first city council discussion about this, the question was asked, what happens if someone can't pay the fine? And from the legal standpoint, at that point at least, they were saying it's going to be treated like other fines, that our additional interest and fees may be added. And even the fines can be turned over to a collection agency. So this is one of those things that is so incredibly unequal that it deserves some attention to. So it was impressive to see how many people showed up to talk. On October 11th, there were 212 written comments received about the camping ban, and most of those were not in favor of the camping ban. There were 78 individuals who testified. There are a lot of people in this room who were there. The testimony was mainly about this isn't a good solution, and yet it passed. And here's what it means. These people made the decision. These are your representatives if you are a resident of Tacoma, and it would be good to be in touch with them. If they voted in a way that you like, let them know that you support them. If they didn't, maybe try to help educate them to ways they could shape their view. Jeffrey, I'll get to your question in just a minute, unless it's something that, okay. So here they are. Here's the way they voted. Keith Blocker is my representative, and I'm proud of the way he voted. When we had this conversation, people started talking about redlining, saying this harkened back to some of that. It's a very different situation. Here it is, 1937. Redlining was about racism. Now we have the buffering of 2022, and it's about poverty and about vulnerable people. If you look at this map, you can get this from the city website, and I'm going to post that in the chat afterwards. But just if you take a look at this map and see how big those 10-block radius buffer zones are, it's kind of incredible. We have these ones out here, but this is Tacoma. This dotted line is Tacoma. And if you notice, the Port of Tacoma is doing a lot of side hardening as well. So people going in that direction is unlikely. Fife has got their own stuff going on. They're trying to make it, I mean, all the municipalities are trying to keep their head above water, and I have empathy for them. But the hardening thing is happening everywhere. So people pretty much would have to go left here. I want to show you these couple of spots. When I showed this map to people who were living in tents on my street, they all asked about this little square here and about this little square here. What are they? Where are they? Are they the places we're supposed to go? Where are we supposed to go? So I wanted to show you the close-up of this section, which this area and this little square is what we're talking about. Does anybody know what that square is? Just unmute and tell me if you do. It's right under, we'll show that one in a minute. The larger block.
That's the bridge. That's the bridge that they cleared. That's.
Thank you, Jay. She's absolutely right. It was a huge campsite that got cleared. So I don't know if it was an oversight that was left, or if they're saying, why don't you go on back there? I'm not sure. But the people that I showed, go ahead, Jay.
If they did, and that would actually be the perfect site if they provided things for them like water, bathroom. The site itself is not actually technically bad if you cleared it and fixed it and provided some kind of housing of some kind temporarily. I mean,
so
but what they're doing is ridiculous. They're just going to clear that again.
So I'm not sure that they are actually inviting people back, and I'm not sure they're actually inviting people to this area, but I think people who live in these areas are probably going to notice that those are the closest places outside of the zone. And yes, here it is, right near the Northwest Furniture Bank, which that community would not be probably happy to have that be the encampment, unless, as Jay said, it was made into a very nice encampment, which is of course a possibility. So this is from Lori Davenport. This is the progress on winter. This is the progress on ending street homelessness. And that's kind of what we are about. So I want to stop the sharing and say, I will ask Jeffrey to add his part to this, but mainly what I want to ask is that people prepare to have conversations in small groups, because there are lots of you who have different perspectives on this, who have different experiences on this, have different ideas, and that's what we want to hear from you. So Jeffrey.
Well, folks, Teresa did a great job summarizing, and totally agree with her. But if you look at the map, everybody keeps looking at that little area. But what I see is a lot of the north end is open. So if you're in, I mean, seriously, almost half the north end is open. So why not encourage people to head that way? There are no camps up there. Well, there's the one, but there's still a lot of parking. You know, those are nice. There's some really nice parking strips up there. And I, speaking facetiously, maybe not. But I'm looking at the map, and this is what I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And I'm going to take one more question, because mainly we want to have this conversation in the breakout session. So go ahead, Zoe.
Thanks. What Jeffrey said is something I've been hearing a lot, and I just kind of want to give people another thing to think about with that, which is folks in the North End are going to be a lot more likely to continuously call the cops on people than we see in, say, Hilltop. People are used to someone having a mental health crisis, or not that we don't get those calls constantly, but I have a lot of concerns about sending people to the North End, where people are not used to.
I'm not asking to send anybody anywhere.
For sure. No, it's just something I've been hearing a lot.
And those are the areas that are open. What can I say?
For sure. No, it's just something I've been hearing a lot, and would like people to consider the type of folks that are housed up there, and what their reactions might be compared to the rest, and not for their comfort, but for the safety.
Oh my God.
Living up there. That's it. Thanks.
Right.
Okay, Gerald, are you going to talk to people about the breakout rooms? I don't know how. We are missing Rob. You can tell we're missing Rob. He always handled this really smoothly.
Yeah. Garrett still with us?
The map, that's the only places.
Garrett had to drop.
Okay, so I'm going to create the breakout rooms. I just wanted to know if you wanted to give people the instructions.
Yeah, so we'll go into our breakout room, and as Teresa said, that's the discussion will be around the camping ban as you go into breakout rooms. Spend about 10 minutes in there.
Okay, and I think so. I think Garrett typically does like 5 people per room, but sometimes people leave when it's a breakout room. So I'm going to do. We'll see how this goes. You ready? So please, while you're in the breakout room, ask somebody to do some note taking, and so that you can bring it back and put it in the chat, because that's the fodder for the good summaries that Timothy provides for us. And also, just the question is, we now have this camping ban is going to start being enforced in just a few weeks. What should we as a coalition do? And what are you doing? How can people help you do what you're trying to do? Do you have some creative thoughts? That's what it is. Anyone have a question about what the question is? All right. Well, I hope I give you the right number. If I find out there are too many people in the breakout rooms, I'm going to come back and move you around for a minute. So be prepared for that. Thanks.
All right.
Welcome back. I want to, because I never think about this during the breakout, but I want to just let people know, if you're ever in a breakout room and it's like you got stuck in there with somebody who just has their computer on, you can come back. You can always come back to the main room and ask to be reassigned. So I appreciate that 2 people did do that. And I'm sorry, Angie, that we didn't have that conversation before you went in. So maybe next time we'll make sure people know. Anyway, thank you for giving some thought to this. I hope that you had a good discussion, and please do put your notes into the chat. If you didn't get someone to take notes, put your own notes in there. And then I'll pass it back to you, Gerald.
Thank you, Teresa. All right. So welcome back, everyone. So we'll be moving on to our next session, our government updates. But I did not, Caleb is off this week. I did not see Matthew for City of Tacoma. Matthew, are you here and I just missed you? Or anyone else from City of Tacoma? I think Matthew was supposed to be here. Yeah, I don't see him. So we'll move on to Pierce County. I didn't see Jeff either.
I'm here.
Well, maybe I was just missing the Buckeyes, Jeff, so just take over.
I am here. I just have to say, Gerald, since you're hosting the meeting, Buckeyes are number 2. Sorry that Alabama fell in the polls. Good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Sorry, everybody. Gerald and I love college football, and I am an Ohio State Buckeye, and he is an Alabama Crimson Tider. I don't know what they call themselves, but I'll call him a Crimson Tider. So it's football season. Go Bucks. As mentioned, I'm with Pierce County Human Services. The only update I have is that we're doing a homeless youth focused point in time count. It's next Thursday, October 20th. If anyone is still interested in volunteering, we need volunteers to make phone calls. We're contacting people off of our homeless management information system by name list that are in that youth population. And our hope will be that we will be able to present the results of that count sometime in late November. Since it's a smaller count, it won't take us as long to clean up the data and provide the results of the count. That's the only update I have. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for both updates. All right. Next, we have the health department. Jenny, I think Jenny's out. So who's speaking for Jenny, or is Jenny in? Someone from the health department. No health department update?
Hi, I'm here.
All
One
right.
second. Getting things back. It's Zoe with TPCHD. We're at the beginning of a pretty major surge. It hasn't happened quite yet, but in COVID cases, we're expecting a really big wave this winter. Starting, it could be coming down in the next couple of weeks, really. We generally trend about a month behind Europe, and they were hit brutally. We're starting to see evidence of that in our wastewater, and we're already seeing that affect healthcare workers and sick outs. So our hospitals are reaching capacity very quickly, and we're likely to see the same thing that we did the last 2 winters. So letting folks know that the pandemic isn't over, your coworkers and the people you work with, your families. So our bivalent boosters are now available to anyone 5+. So if you're talking with folks, please let them know that those boosters are new and are effective against the newer strains that the old formulations were not yet. If you're work at a shelter or anywhere else that you would like to see a vaccine clinic set up, please let Jenny or I know, and we can get you looped in with having a vaccine clinic on site. What else? Monkeypox is stabilizing. We're not seeing a big rise in cases, and that's true across the state. Winter weather is on the horizon, so I know we'll be putting some information about how to help protect folks from the colds and all of that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. If you run into anyone that does have COVID or that's starting to show symptoms, they can get in for testing at one of our static sites, one of our testing sites, which I will ask Jenny to put the link to when she sends out the follow-up for this meeting. But if we can get to people in the first 5 days after testing positive or symptoms starting, there's still Paxlovid available that seems to still be pretty effective. And we're really trying to get utilization of that product up, especially for older folks and folks that have not been vaccinated at all. And that medication can be accessed for free. You need a doctor's appointment to get it, but we have a program called Test to Treat, where someone can go get tested on site, have a virtual call on site with a doctor, and be sent with a prescription to go pick up that medication. It's a 5-day, twice a day course. No major side effects. A lot of people don't like that it makes your mouth taste metallic while you're on it, but it's really, really important that we get these to folks. If you have anyone at your shelter with a case or need someone at a camp. I think that is it. I won't take up any more time. Any questions, Janet?
Yeah, this coalition was effective in getting syphilis testing at a street encampment. Do you have any report of syphilis cases or what you want us to know about syphilis?
No, I work in COVID exclusively. So, and other that stuff is done with another department, and I don't get their data. But I can ask for that to be included in what's going out.
All right. Don't see any other hands. If anyone has any other comments or questions, please let's make sure we put them in the chat, and we'll continue there. I see Richard has given us a real-time update from what's going on the sweep. We'll come back maybe to ask Richard doing good trouble. That way, for the interest of keeping us kind of moving here, and I think Jennifer may have some time restraint there, so we'll keep going with our government update. Valerie, did you have anything from Pierce County, from your side of Pierce?
Just overall, we're being grateful. Our 9 nonprofits have gotten out 162, well, probably 20, close to 20 nonprofits have gotten out $162 million since the 2020, and are still, the 9 we have currently now are still just working every single day and are just doing such amazing work. So just a public thank you. I can't talk today. I am so tired of homecoming this week. That, those nonprofits deserve all the thank you, as well as all the other ones that the county and the city both have a chance to work with. So, but other than that, just moving along, we're still working hard, and the permanent program, more information will be coming out hopefully next week on that permanent program, which is great.
All right. Well, thank you, Valerie. Kathy, you have your hand up. If it's with the sweeps, we'll come back and doing a good trouble time, but if it's for Valerie, we'll go.
No, I have a question for Valerie or anyone else.
All right.
So rental assistance with the Pierce County portal being shut down, where can I refer folks to?
Yeah, great question. So it's kind of like we're back in 2019, right? Where rental assistance was very limited, very hard to get. And so back in 2019, your options were really to call 211 and see what they had. St. Leo sometimes has some funding. St. Vincent de Paul has some funding. But for the most part, it's just hit or miss with like local religious sectors sometimes have funding. And it's going to be scraping by, hundreds of dollars at a time. I know out here on the Key Peninsula, Communities and Schools sometimes has dollars. So maybe that's an option in different communities. But hopefully with the new permanent program starting January 1, we'll be able to have more of a cohesive response, kind of like mimicking what we did through COVID, to get to where folks can go to one place and apply and kind of gear all of those resources into like one major bucket. So we're going to be working on that starting in January, but super limited. But 211's the very first thing I always tell people. And then the St. Leo's and St. Vincent de Paul's are two amazing partners who've been really helping pick up where we have not been able to fill in those gaps.
So winter is coming, but the help is on the way too.
I feel like I've lived in winter since March of 2020, but yes, winter is coming and help is on the way too.
Okay.
Great show. Love it.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Valerie? All right, perfect. Marcus and Marcus's breakout group, if y'all could provide your breakout room number so that'll help Timothy when he's putting his information together. So we'll know what breakout room that was. Thank you. Next, we'll move to emergency management. Jody. Let's see, Jody Ferguson on the call for emergency management. Anyone else can update emergency management? All right, so we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, safe sites for all.
That's me.
That's you, Jan.
Okay, all righty, everybody wake up. Teresa, please do a screen share. And you know, Garrett did a wonderful.
Did you want me to show the slideshow? I thought you were going to show it.
I
can open it if you want me to.
I didn't load it up to do a screen share, so just
give me a sec.
Yeah, I'll do a little introduction. Now Garrett did a PowerPoint that was just amazing in its content, in its coverage, in you know, all the points that he brought out. It had a lot of words in it. So Teresa wins the category, the PowerPoint category of right graphics, right number of bullet points. It's engaging. So that's, Teresa is just like my go-to person. And then of course, Lori Davenport does the artwork on it. So go ahead and get us going. Now, what we're going to talk about is safe parking is the county proposed draft on safe parking. And it came out this week. We were, there was public comment on the proposal to the study session, Pierce County study session for the Planning Commission. Several of us attended, and then the draft was presented. The draft is 63 pages long. Compare that to our website, Safe Parking. So if you go to our coalition website, hit the button that says Safe Sites for All, hit the button that says Safe Parking, it's one page. So the county draft is 63 pages versus comparing to our one page. So that was my first big aha moment. Next slide, please. Okay, the brief summary. This is going to talk about what we currently have, which is House Bill 1754, and Jeffrey's going to talk in a minute about House Bill 1754 since he was a co-author on that. Yes, Richard, it was 63 pages. However, the bulk of it is in legalese, which is beyond my ability to understand those graphs. The last 5 pages of the 63 is actual language pertaining to regulations. So the one thing that I want you to notice here is that according to House Bill 1754, municipalities can require an MOU. Simple, an MOU. And Jeffrey has already run into officials from the city of Tacoma that want to take that in a different direction. So the next slide after this one. Okay.
Oh, so so this one just says that they can only impose conditions that are
Correct.
necessary to protect public health.
It's the scope of what it is. Okay, then what will we change? So this is what we were presented with on Tuesday. One of these, okay, just question, yes. On the second line item, the first line item is there's no change, but on the second line item, why was the zoning requirement changed for non-religious sites? So for instance, some things are the same, like the regulation asking for personal information. The person has to, that enters the safe parking site, has to agree to release personal information in the event that law enforcement wants to have access to that. However, anybody is allowed to be there unless there is an active warrant for their arrest. But the question on safe parking for non-religious means civic. So zones that currently allow homeless shelters. I dug around and I could not find the definition of the zones that currently allow homeless shelters, and that seems restrictive just at the first glance. Also the occupancy limit is maximum 20% spaces or 20 vehicles, whatever is less. That might be unnecessary, but the big question here, and I tried to find everywhere that I could, what is the difference between legally established? Because in this new draft, they refer both the religious-based and the civic-based sites must have legally established versus an existing parking lot. That is going to be problematic. It's already been problematic. So we need some clarification from the county on that. Next slide, please. The other regulations were pretty much in line with what we currently practice. The MOU language was basically the same. The resources, the bare minimum resources, which is for public health, which is the water, the dumping, the waste. The big question is that the new ordinance talks about RV, and we have yet to do an RV site, and there's a lot of discussion on RVs. That is going to be a different level of management than what we currently have. But the big difference on civic is that the county is requiring that the civic, in other words, the non-faith-based group that is willing to have safe parking, must have a paid social service agency be the site manager. Why would we have to do that? Why would we have to have somebody who is willing to have their property be used for safe parking be the one who does the contracting? That could be something that the county themselves, Human Services, could use one of their existing contracted service providers to do that kind of management. So to add another level onto civic sites for them to be in charge of hiring a social service agency seems a bit onerous. Okay, next slide, please. So that basically is a recap of what the differences are. Is the existing parking lot, is it how different from what they think they can mandate? Okay, and for instance, in the current way that we do it, in the current language, is that faith-based organizations can go to the Director of Human Services and apply for a waiver of anything that's listed in the draft. So any faith-based organization can go to the Human Services and say, you know, we can comply with this except for this particular provision. Can we get a waiver on that? That is not allowed for the civic. The civic group that wants to do safe parking doesn't have an allowance to ask for a waiver for any of the provisions. So that seems onerous. We're going to go into further depths on this on this question with the camping, the safe sites ban on Monday at noon with our Zoom group, Safe Sites for All. Go to the website to register in advance. So this is, there we go. This is open for discussion, for critique, and for us to go back to the county with our recommendations. There is going to be a 3-month review after this is enacted. So please come, and Jeffrey, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. To the best of my knowledge, 1754 sets the floor for what cities and counties can do, and the states for that matter. In that floor, it was only 10% of the parking was available. They're saying 20 is fine. There's some questions I have in regards to this particular agency dictating to land use group, dictating to faith communities what they can do on their own property based on federal and state law. I'm not the best, I'm not the legal expert to talk about that, but it just seems to me that they're trying to circumvent what the intent of the RCW is in regards to faith communities. The fact is, faith communities can do whatever ministry on their property they choose to do for the homeless. And that's a state law that's based on federal law. I think in some ways we need to find a point where everybody can agree that we can move ahead with this. Otherwise, the city and the county are going to find themselves in lawsuits trying to answer some of these questions. And so I think some time is going to have to take place before we as a coalition move any farther on this. I'm not happy with both the county and the city trying to push back on what is the faith community's right to do. And that's becoming an issue.
So if this is interesting to anyone, please put any other comments you have in the chat and or come to the Monday meeting. We'd be happy to have you. You can find the link to the meeting on the coalition website, and also I'll post it in the chat.
All right. All right. So there's no questions. I don't see any questions. Don't see any hands. Any other comments? Well, let's continue to use the chat and continue to move forward. Continue to have conversations. At this time, do we have any coalition updates, committee updates? Any other committee updates?
None at this time, Gerald.
Okay. Thank you, Rosemary. None for now. So, well, we'll move forward with Jennifer. She's ready to get started. She's got some time.
All right. Good morning, all. Jennifer Ammons. I'm a staff attorney with the Northwest Justice Project. I regularly attend these meetings, but don't speak up a whole lot. But I was asked to give a summary of the new law, the new lawsuit, Johnson v. City of Grants Pass, Oregon. So this decision actually it's another Ninth Circuit decision, building on Martin v. Boise. Both of them are based on the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. So the excessive fines and cruel and unusual punishment prohibition. So the question in these cases is really, where is the limit of what cities can punish people for doing? And Martin v. Boise, I'm sure you guys know, said that when people don't have an alternative to sleeping on the street, when the shelter beds available are greatly exceeded by the number of people on the street, you cannot criminally prosecute them for doing what they must do to stay alive, which means sleeping, standing, sitting, resting, those kind of things. What Johnson v. City of Grants Pass adds to that is, one, sleeping doesn't just mean laying on the sidewalk. It inherently includes the most basic, the most rudimentary precautions that a homeless person might take in the elements. That's a quote from there. So having a blanket over them, having a pillow under their head, these are things that are inherently necessary to sleep when you are in a cold, damp environment. I think you might be able to argue that there are more things that are necessary in order to sleep during the rainy months here in Washington. But I would note that both Martin v. Boise and Johnson v. Grants Pass specifically talk about the city may be able to ban the use of structures, the use of tents, the use of fires and stoves. Grants Pass specifically includes in its, you can't ban sleeping outside with rudimentary protections. You can't ban sleeping in the car at night either. So sleeping in the car at night is considered equivalent to sleeping with a blanket and a pillow in the minds of the Ninth Circuit. The other thing that Grants Pass added to the Martin v. Boise laws was that you can't sneak your way around, well, we're not punishing them criminally yet by just giving out civil infractions, if the bottom line is those civil infractions ultimately end up in criminal charges. And that's exactly what we have here. And this was something that we as a coalition pointed out to the city council before, before they passed this, that that in particular seems very problematic. Because not only do we not want to see people adding more crimes to their records that prevent them from getting housed and keep them on the streets, but it is unconstitutional to have a scheme that first gives civil citations that lead to criminal prosecution for basic necessities of life when you don't have anywhere else to perform them. Now that last statement, though, is why I'm not sure that Grants Pass is actually going to help us all that much with this new camping ban. So even Martin v. Boise, the court specifically said, we're not saying that the city can't regulate where people can sleep or when they can sleep in certain places. But they can't say you can't sleep anywhere in the city on public property. So here, we have the 10 block radius. It covers about half of the city of Tacoma. I think that would be a good argument from the city that, well, we're just telling them where they can do it. And, if the city was saying you cannot pitch a tent in the middle of Tacoma Avenue, like in the middle of the street, that makes sense, because for purposes of safety, public safety, they should be able to regulate that you can't pitch a tent in the middle of a busy street. But I do have some questions about 10 blocks. I mean, why does it need to be 10 blocks? The city needs to have an interest in what it's doing. They have to have a basis that stands up to some scrutiny for why they're doing what they're doing. So I think the 10 blocks may be attackable. I am very concerned that this law doesn't really spell out where people can be and what they can be doing. I was just trying to find a definition of camping. There may be one in the ordinance, but I can't find the ordinance itself as passed. So if you haven't defined what camping is, how do you know if you're doing it? And I've been telling everyone who would listen that I couldn't tell you where you could pitch a tent in Tacoma now. Because I don't know where these 10 block, what's a block when you don't have city blocks there? How far is a block? I mean, where I live, you go from 54th to 56th. There's no 55th on a lot of streets. So how do you know, is that 1 block or 2 blocks? And then we throw in 200 feet from waterways. I think it's very difficult, if not impossible, for someone to determine where they can and cannot be. So I think that's going to be a big issue as well. But that's my summary of grants pass and what it does and doesn't do for us. Jeffrey, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Jennifer. That was nicely done. Thank you. They're saying no camping, but they haven't said no camping in the ordinance. What about cars and RVs? People who are sleeping in cars and RVs, can they be within that 10 block or not? Because I never heard that in any of the discussions. And I'm not sure if anybody in the city has paid attention to that. I mean, over half our people who are homeless are in vehicles. And if that's the case, are we going to go after all the car campers too, and the RV campers within these areas? Or just what is it we're looking at? I don't know.
Yeah. And without knowing what constitutes camping, I mean, some people have considered camping to include having possessions with you if you are sitting next to a pillow. But I mean, are we really saying that you can't be walking down the street within 10 blocks of a shelter with a backpack that, and you have your sleeping bag and your pillow on your backpack? Because that's not just affecting people who are homeless. I think we've got potentially void for vagueness issues here. I also saw a question in the chat from Teresa. What happens if 3 or more emergency shelters are strategically opened with more of these buffers that basically eliminates all public property? I think once you get up to where you have very little public property left, I think then you're saying, well, this is a ban that is pretending not to be a complete ban, but it is a complete ban. And what I think we're seeing from the Ninth Circuit here is that the court is seeing through those kind of facades. The court is saying, wait, just because you're calling this civil infractions doesn't rescue you from what we said about criminal prosecution. And just because you're saying, oh, we're not criminalizing sleeping, we're just criminalizing having a blanket over you while you do it. They're seeing through these things. So I think it would be a good challenge if we get most or all of the city blocked out with these buffers. I don't know at what point it reaches that percentage of the city. I know we've been doing battle in Puyallup over, what if all these spots that are available are practically unavailable because they are taken up by, like, say, a Costco, and you'd have to buy out Costco in order to put a shelter there. I don't have the answers to that, but I think that's where we lawyers our ears start to perk up when you start saying, and what if we have one here and one here and one here, and now we have like a block here and a block up here and a block down here that people can be in. That's the point at which I say, no, this is a ban. This is just a complete ban. Because there are 2 types of unconstitutional laws. One is unconstitutional on its face, We can read this ordinance and already know it is unconstitutional, period, regardless of how they enforce it. The other is an as enforced or as applied unconstitutionality. This one, I think, is, I don't think it's unconstitutional on its face, although the the vagueness might put it in that category. But I think it's got a lot of possibilities for unconstitutional as enforced. So we'll see what the city does with it.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, let's continue to use the chat, and we'll go with the chat. If there's, I don't see any more questions, so we'll move on to our next section. We will be looking for some good trouble. Anyone have any good trouble announcements? See, yes, Ryan.
I don't know if it's trouble, but my Hive project is all built and we're ready to take on up to 12 people. So been a while coming. And probably be a week before we get residents. So if there's anybody that wants to come see it that wasn't able to come to our gathering last week, let me know and we'll schedule something out. But I'm meeting with Tacoma Rescue Mission next week, and Jenny's working with the Tacoma Pro Bono's Navigator program, and we're going to see about getting some folks lined up. So that's that.
Can you put your contact in the chat for people who might want to do that?
You bet.
Thanks.
And Gerald, can I jump in? My hands are full. We're delivering blankets and some cold weather supplies to the sweep down here at 5th and J. The sweep is underway. Plenty of police out. Folks don't know where they're going to go. One woman was recommended that she go to 84th and Hosmer. That's not going to happen. So anyway, we're distributing as I speak. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rich, for that update. Jeffrey, then Zoe.
Yeah, sorry for being back on again, but we're looking at safe parking out at our church on 96. And the city has approached me and said, oh, you need a permit. And
I wish I had more stuff. There's a blanket, cold weather stuff.
But permits in this town tend to take 3 to 5 months to implement. And Allison said, well, we can do that simultaneously. And I said, well, wait a minute, no permit, because the permit takes too long, number one. And half the things that are permitted are for temporary shelters in buildings. And we're talking a parking lot, just parking. And so I said, I'd be open to an MOU. And so we are going to be talking in about a week, a little over a week, about an MOU that can work for any of the churches in Tacoma that want to do safe parking. Otherwise, you're going to ask to be doing a permit that will take 3 to 5 months. And I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. Zoe.
Hey folks, I threw this in the chat already, but the group I work with outside the health department, Tacoma Mutual Aid Collective, is working on fundraising and collecting supply donations, especially of tents, tarps, sleeping bags, and warm clothes right now, for distribution to folks who are needing to move, but who either don't have those items already or whose items won't survive a move. If you are interested in helping us in that work or in receiving some of these supplies, assuming we can source enough beyond what we're going to do, please send us an email. I put it in the chat already, but I'll put it again. And I'll also throw in our social media links, which is where we do a lot of our calls for donations and funds. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Zoe, for that. If anyone has anything for Zoe or any comments to Jeffrey as well, please drop those in the chat. And before we move, anyone have any comments or questions on what Jeffrey just mentioned and that you want to make public? I am seeing no hands. All right, so we move on to our next section on the agenda. Reflect on today's meeting. Let's get a reflection. Is there anything anyone see that we may be able to do better? Something we did good? Something you want to discuss? Jan.
There is a lot happening right now with the county coming up with a draft on safe parking, which we've been pushing for over 2 years, close to 3 years now since the beginning of COVID, with the city doing just a massive change in camping bans. And I know this is all in response to the horrific rise in just the gross numbers of folks being forced into unsheltered homelessness. There's just a lot going on. This is the only place that I know of that we can come together as a community to talk about policy. And I know policy just makes people's eyes glaze over. Yeah, but it's all we've got. It's the best thing that we've got as far as a civil response to what's happening. So I don't fault anybody for not being current on any particular grand plan or a new ordinance or a council meeting or a planning session or whatever. I am just grateful that folks go and attend what they can attend and bringing it back to the coalition. But that being said, does anybody else feel like it's just a lot happening right now? And then winter is coming and we still have no resolution on how to handle inclement weather. So I'm glad that we meet, but I'm just feeling like there is, especially when you go out and meet folks, when you meet the folks that we're talking about, and you look them in the eye, for gosh sakes, and you have nothing to offer. It's just awful. It's just awful. So there, I've said it. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jan, for that input. I feel it too. Thank you. Thank you for saying what I didn't know how to say. Jay.
I was looking at the 10-day forecast. Our rain starts on Friday the 21st. And it looks like we have intermittent precipitation after that. And then we head into the 50s during the day and 40s during the night, starting around 2 days after that. So yeah, it's about that time. And we're going to start seeing it. And it looks like it's straight rain for at least 5 days.
All right. Thank you for that, Jay. Kenneth.
Nope. It was an accident.
All right, no worries. Are there any others? Jay, there you go, went down. All right, no others? All right, Rosemary.
Just a really quick one. I want, in terms of how the meeting went today, I really appreciate your stepping in to do this facilitation. It was wonderful. And Teresa and Garrett pulling in there to keep the system going. So one of the things we like to think about here is how do we share our roles more? And so there is one thing I would say about the governance meeting, that we are thinking about big questions too, about how can we be effective in the policy arena? What might we need to do? What kind of groups might we need to foster? So we meet on Wednesdays at 9 in the morning, the governance work group, and it's open to anyone who might have some thoughts about becoming the most effective network we can be. So welcome to join us if you would like, and we can think about this meeting as well as other meetings.
Thank you so much for that, Rosemary. Angie?
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to bring to our attention that, this is holiday season. Usually we deal with the fact that we have a lot of people who are, losing their lives, by suicide, anything. The holidays are hard in general for people. And now here we are doing this ban that is eliminating, that whole aspect on top of the fact that it's the holiday season, we deal with inclement weather, we deal with all of these things. So we try to provide emergency shelter for inclement weather because it's cold, but then we're going out of our way to do these, well, the city, you know, to do these sweeps and everything, knowing ahead of time that there's not enough shelter for everyone. It's like, it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. It's inhumane. It's hurtful. It's harmful. And, you know, I just think that we just really need to acknowledge that this is all happening during cold weather season when people already, you know, don't have a lot. And now they want to do this band, and there's no provisions put in place to make sure that, you know, we have enough for people even when it's cold in general. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Christine, for that comment as well. I think it's well received here as well. I know I heard what you said, and I thank you for it. Kathy.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
No worries.
One of my main objections to the camping ban is, and I'm going to say this out loud to the city council, you cannot with any type of authenticity promote diversity, equity, and inclusion while at the same time you're drawing exclusionary zones in our city. I don't believe that that's who we are. I believe that Tacoma is a very diverse city. I know that we have a lot of issues, but I think that we in general are very accepting and open. And I cannot for the life of me understand how recently promoting inclusion has been a huge priority, and now they're doing this exclusionary zoning. I don't like it on that basis alone.
Thank you, Kathy. Strong words, thank you. Are there any others? I see no other hands. So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. I know it's tough, seems sometimes tough to find these type things, especially considering what we're talking about, but they are there. So are there any success stories anyone want to share?
I got one.
Oh.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand. One of my street brothers ended up being back on the street, and he was in his truck. He actually has a job and stuff. He just lost his place because the place he was staying at sold the house he was in. He has a house, and he took one of his street friends with him. And so we have two housed in Kitsap that weren't for a minute. So two housed.
Great story. Yeah, great story. Thank you for sharing. Teresa.
I want to do a shout out to Families Shoulder to Shoulder. It's a little organization that has been working with New Connections. We show up in court and write letters of support about people who are up for resentencing. And because of the combined efforts of not just Families Shoulder to Shoulder and New Connections, but there are actually a lot of people who are on this page. Because of those efforts, we now have one new resident at the Irma's Place, one of our shelters, who basically came out because of that. We have another one who's due to come in the middle of November for the same reason. So if you have an opportunity, if you're asked to write a letter of support for someone, please consider it. And thanks to everybody who keeps trying to make the justice system a little more just. We're delighted with our new residents.
Thank you. Thank you. I see no more hands. You can also drop something in the chat if you need to. So I don't know, Teresa, Rob may be very proud of you there. We are a few minutes ahead of time.
Proud of you. You're the one who's keeping the agenda going. Thank you. Oh, Jay's got something.
There we go.
I'm
Jay.
sorry, guys. One more thing. Community First Village did put out their public proposal to be Pierce County Council, and they are looking for, I won't say comment, they say support. I'm going to go say, read that for yourself and put forward whatever words you choose to.
All right. Thank you. Are there any others? Is there anything anyone needs to share, wants to share? Well, if not, looks like you all just bought yourself some time off. I call this Fun Friday because by 2 o'clock, I try to get out and go get my grandkids, but they're sick today, so no Fun Friday today. But thank y'all for participating. And for those who want to hang around and help us get ready for next week, we'll be hanging around at the end. There's nothing else. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.